Hi, I'm Kent.
And I'm Anna.
We're married, we make movies, and we believe that anyone in any circumstance can make a feature film.
Welcome to the Feature Filmmaker Podcast. If you want a career making movies, you're in the right place.
Hit subscribe to never miss an episode.
Let's jump right in.
So I was saying that I've only seen trailers, but like instantly I could
Wait,
tell.
why don't you introduce?
What? Oh, okay. You don't
Yeah,
want to just jump right into this?
No, I mean, well, you can just start with like, who are we? What are we talking about?
Oh, everyone's different. Anyway, so
Sorry.
episode 103, and we're still figuring out.
Hey,
Welcome to the Film and Family Podcast. We have Josh, and it's Jesse.
You can call me Jessie. People call me Jess, Jessica. That's the full name.
Okay, so
Got
Josh and Jessica. I could mess that up. Jordan and the filmmakers behind their first film was This World Won't Break, and the new film that is yet to be gracing the world is El Tonto Por Cristo. And I don't know how to say that, because if I say it with a correct accent, it sounds pretentious, and if I say it with a gringo accent, it sounds gringo.
Yes.
But
I like the fact that even just the title alone gets people nervous, you know. Yeah, but it's so we live in Dallas, Texas, and so everything's so Tex-Mex here. And it's always been in my work, and so I was like, El Tonto Por Cristo was Jess. She goes, you should just call it that, because once it sticks, it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds awkward at first. We always say like the band The Flaming Lips. What a weird name for a band. But like, I couldn't imagine them being called anything else.
And now it's just normal. You say it, you don't think of how strange it actually is. So
yeah.
We thought it would have a little more intrigue.
Even like Star Wars. What sounds more campy than the words Star Wars, which has virtually nothing to do with anything in that story, other than I guess it's like a galactic.
Yeah,
there's some war battles, I guess. Like, I don't know. It just is like, it just sounds
you hear
funny.
Star Wars and you hear the music.
Yeah, you hear the music.
Yeah.
And it's stuck. It's like, it's totally normal. Like you said, like none of us question it. So
yeah, and I think in this day and age, it's also really good. There's so much noise and so many things coming out, which is a positive thing. But to have something like El Tonto Por Cristo, you're not going to get it confused. It's like some people have films. Like there's a film called The Island, which is an Orthodox film. But if you Google The Island, it could be, you get lost.
Bay.
Yeah, or it could just be an island.
Yeah.
And there's Scorsese's Shutter Island. But it's just it's kind of crazy. So El Tonto Por Cristo, we looked and there's not one, so we're good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't always do all my Google due diligence, but typically we try to.
Yeah.
So, the two of us, we find it 0% strange because we're both fluent in Spanish. So, however, what I found striking about the film itself, well, first of all, I was immediately impressed. I came across your guys' work through your interview with Alex Ferrari, and what struck me in that interview, and later I looked at your trailer for that film, was I was like, oh, okay, so these guys are making films. They're a lot like us, that they're doing this on a very indie, outside of the Hollywood system way, but you're not like chums. Like, your stuff looks and feels, it doesn't just like, okay, it has good cinematography. Sometimes that's hard. Like, looks professional, sounds professional. That's congratulations already, right? But then like, that's a frustrating feedback when I get that from like even distributors. They're like, we watched your trailer, we have no interest in watching your film, but we'll sell it. But it looks like you guys mixed it and graded it correctly, and it's like, wow, thank you. Did you like care about the story or whatever? But like, it looks like you guys are making films that are they're existential, they're character based, they're spiritual,
thoughtful, artistic.
Yeah, and so I'm like, okay, I'm interested in these artists mainly, and so when I saw that you were making this Orthodox film about an old guy, and it's called Fool for Christ, right? And I'm like, okay, but I know what it might be, and I know what it probably won't be, because I know what kind of films you guys are making. You're not making like I don't know if you call it mainstream. If you're not making like niche, like evangelical cinema that
Correct.
has a certain some unfortunate stigmas, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
it's this very specific thing that's associated with a very specific religious tradition, and I'm
Hmm.
like super into that.
Hmm.
We've wondered for a long time why do Jews do it way better than us?
Right.
Like
Right. Yeah.
we can't even touch movies like on the big scale, like Fiddler on the
Yeah.
Roof, on the small scale, like Ushpizin. If you haven't seen that, that's an Israeli film that's really cool. And I'm like, why do ours
Yeah.
feel like commercials for our church and theirs feel like stories about humans, you know? And
Mm.
so when I see what you guys are doing, I'm like, okay, you're getting so tight and specific about a very unique experience, like an older gentleman who's renounced like public life, and
Hmm.
it's through an Orthodox tradition. I'm like, oh, now I'm gonna go do like an experience that's really unique. So I'm really excited about your film.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I think that's. Do you want to talk on the reason for El Tonto Por Cristo? Of why it's like we always say, when you scan the radio station, if you're traveling, you're in a rent a car and you scan the station and it stops on something and you hear like a couple notes and maybe just something about blowing in the wind or something, you're like, that's a Christian radio station. And you know it. And if you're skimming through the TVs, it was kind of the same way. And I grew up. My dad he still is an evangelical pastor, and he was an evangelist on the road. And so orthodoxy could not be farther from that. And it's, we've been Orthodox for almost 11 years. And I still don't feel Orthodox enough to make this film. But I knew I needed to because I was distracted at times during our divine liturgy, not paying attention. I was looking at all the iconography going, what story can I tell? So I just told it from my perspective it's about humanity. It's not about religion per se. And there's nothing shoehorned in. I don't know.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Well, I think that was one of our personal experiences in the conversion process for us from having been raised, evangelical, non-denominational. There was a pivotal point in our spiritual life that led us to the Orthodox Church. And through that, one of the biggest differences is it's so interesting because I'm a yoga instructor. I've done that for many years, and so I understood enough of Eastern like thought, and it's way different than Western. But I understood enough to not take what Westerners might put as face value and be like and sum it up to an optimal knowing about something. So when we actually got to when we attended St. Seraphim, which is here in Dallas for the first time, and our boys, they're in their 20s now. This was 11 years ago. So minus 11 years, they're much younger. I was like, okay, how do I tell them what we're about to experience in a way they would understand? And so I remember saying to them, okay, pretend we're going to Indiana Jones Church, just because it's so ancient and it's in everything. But my point in this is that it's all happening with or without you. Like it's been happening since the time of Christ, with or without you. There's there's not a high point homily. There's not a big emotional worship service, but everything is so chock full of meaning. And so then when you start participating, and like what Josh said, even through this process, we're not academic intellectuals. I am an entrepreneur and Josh is a filmmaker. His artistry and creativity meets my creative entrepreneurship and, artistry. And that's how we collaborate. So, but we did, as we are, and if we become and are still becoming Orthodox Christian, working out our faith and fear and trembling, is what we really realized is, oh, this is a lifestyle. This is not and I would say probably most people in the Christian faith would say, oh, it's a lifestyle, it's a relationship. But like, I don't think you realize it till you are participating in the Orthodox Church. Like, it is something you are becoming and constantly becoming. And so this inner transformation was something that we saw. And what's very interesting is I would see that in my yoga students. Like I had a very indie yoga space. It was like vinyasa flow to indie music type of a situation. But what I did see was while it's not a team sport, people would come, they enjoyed being together, working out their junk on the mat. Maybe it was mental clarity or better health. Some of them were swapping something positive for addictions that they had, but they were doing it together, but it was really an individual practice for them. That's a very Eastern way of approaching your health, be it spiritual health, like any type of health. So what we saw was this thing begin to transform our lives individually, and the sacramental life of the church. And we begin to see this growth in Texas, and which is very interesting. It's Texas, first of all, the Bible Belt. And then you see this very countercultural way approaching a faith that most are familiar with, at least in some capacity, if you live in the United States. And then as we've grown and learned, and then Josh, of course, he did a lot of research. We took a pilgrimage to San Francisco, and that's a whole other story. And but he started to gather these stories and to write it into the singular narrative. While it's fictional, the story's true. It's taken from true account from time, written into this one figure at this mythical monastery on the coast of Texas. But it's very interesting taking these Eastern traditions into Texas that has a culture all of its own anyway, and then making it into this story, because now we've seen as it's growing so much, as people seem to be in the West looking for something that has some significant roots. I mean, it's very interesting because it's this fusion of what already has been happening in the faith, and then cultural type things, because we live in Texas and it is Tex-Mex. And then Josh's unique take on storytelling, which when you watch This World Won't Break, and then you heard the story about This World Won't Break, and when you eventually do see El Tonto Por Cristo, you can definitely go, oh, I mean, you'll see their different stories, but you're like, oh, there's something very Josh David Jordan in the way that he does his film work. And I love it so much, I get to co-create in the sense of like we discuss and I'll add ideas, and we are, companions in the whole process and everything. But the storytelling through Josh's lens is so unique. We have future scripts too, so which are different than this, but we're really excited to bring this, even if it's, for yourself, like as film lovers, as people that want something that is not just cinematically beautiful and has strong performances and music, etc., but there's a storyline, but also something that's fresh and new. There's so many remakes of films, and you're like, why aren't we telling original stories? What's and there's probably multiple reasons for that, but we do live in a day and age where you can bypass that, like yourselves, where you can say, this is what I'm doing, and you can make it. And I've just talked way too long, so
I think they're muted.
Oops.
I don't think I can hear you guys. I think you're muted, maybe. Or is it on my end?
Can you hear us now?
There we go. Yeah.
Mike?
Whoops.
No, we heard you the whole time. That was just when
just
she
now.
stopped.
Yeah. So what sounds like to me is like it's an Eastern Western. It's
an Eastern Western.
Oh, yeah.
and it's so cool. Like, I mean, I love that stuff. And so it's like you said, this really strong Eastern tradition with this really strong Western setting. That's exciting. I don't know. I think it's really exciting. And it even feels Eastern. Well, it feels almost European, which I guess you could call in the middle, in its approach of like its aspect ratio, and it's black and white, and it's a more of a I don't want to label it as transcendental style because I haven't seen the film, but it definitely feels influenced by
100%.
A sort of as defined by Paul Schrader's transcendental style in cinema.
It's so crazy. I had the book, and I didn't read it when I was making the film just because I don't want to be influenced too much. But I'm rereading it right now, and I'm like, El Tonto Por Cristo could be in this book, because I was very inspired by Bellatar, by Paula Palawowski's Ida, Bresson. It just, in the aspect ratio, like you said, it really is. I mean, it's European cinema. It's 1:6:6:1. We use the same lens that Tarkovsky used. It's a zoom lens, but it's from the 60s. and it's humongous. We used one lens. It was humongous, but that glass and the way it was ancient by using, digital cameras. We used the new red, and it still gave it that antique look. But it definitely is what Paul Schrader talks about, which is slow cinema. And as much as a lot of distributors or studios per se, or people that we meet with, they're like, well, it's black and white. You have a color version, and is there a way to read it to speed it up a little bit? And I'm like, I don't want it like everything else. I mean, I understand it coming from a business aspect, but I think that, slow cinema is a treat. I can't watch it every single day. I mean, I watch it probably once a week, and it's my escape. It's my yoga. It's my meditation, because, the writer director is allowing you to participate in something and not force feeding you something. And you walk away and you have like, what did I just see? And I like that feeling. A lot of people don't like that feeling. They don't like to wonder, or what did that mean, instead of, just, being a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and like there's, we tried to do this early when one of our first short films, Anna watched it in its festival setting, and she came back and said, Kent, we are waiting long on shots, but nothing interesting is happening. But we watch these movies where they have this slower approach, and it's like suck you in, fascinating.
We're trying to imitate
Why-
that, but not successfully at first.
Yeah, you can't just not cut. And it's like, I'm making transcendental-style cinema, it's like it's slow, which makes it good. It's like, no, it doesn't. And that's the problem with, can we make it in color? Can we cut this down? What they're saying is, can we take like steps 99 and 100 and 101 and just copy those? And it's like, yeah, but what about steps like 1, 2, and 3? Like, what was it that like was the germ
Well,
of
it's
this
like,
thing,
can we cut
the
what makes
soul
it
of
unique so that it fits into this box that we know how to sell?
Yeah.
But then you lose what makes it special.
Well, and what's interesting is like the movie Columbus, they marketed that film directly against the grain, in the sense that they were like, we wanted the trailer to feel like a meditative, peaceful thing,
Sure.
because it would just stand out. Like even on social media, it would stand out. And like they actually did like a pretty respectable theatrical run with that film. And there's lots of examples of films that have done it. It's just people are scared. And I think we all deal with that, even as artists, when we poo-poo on the producers and the studios, right? But like, I think even as artists, I get scared all the time. I watch a movie, and every time I watch a movie now, I question in myself, should I be making that? Should I be like that artist instead? And I don't even know who I am per se, quote unquote, like, and so it's a lot of fear that I feel like I have to wade through. I don't know. Do you ever feel like, did you experience that when you were making this, or did you feel like pretty assured, like this is what we're doing?
I think that's what that's the reason we're artists, is we should not really fully understand who we are. That's why I think cinema is so exciting. When you watch Scorsese stuff early on, he's figuring out who he is. And I just rewatched Taxi Driver recently. I know it's very cliche. Everybody knows Taxi Driver, but a lot of people said that they've seen it and they haven't seen it. And you're watching him become Martin Scorsese, and there's no apologies for those films. And so I don't apologize for my earlier work, because you really don't know until you're on set, until you're in the editing room, of those mistakes. No film is perfect. Ron Howard said, no matter what film you make or how many awards it wins, it's guaranteed to break your heart.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't what you had in your brain, because you guys know, it's, you make a film 3 times, in the writing and the filming and the editing. And it's true. And with this film, El Tonto Por Cristo, I did something that you're not supposed to do, which is paint yourself in a corner, do 1 takes, no coverage. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And it worked. There's 2 scenes, and those broke my heart, like Ron Howard says.
They broke my heart too.
It was my favorite things that I wrote, and it didn't work. It didn't work.
It didn't serve the film, and they're great scenes. They're like so great and conceptually, but even if they worked, our film is 2 hours and 14 minutes. And while it is that transcendental style, I wouldn't say, and it is slower than most people are used to, but it does not, it keeps going for 2 hours and 14 minutes. There's really nothing you can cut, and there's definitely nothing we can add.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The opening scene is 8.5 minutes, and it's a man coming over a hill, and he has a conversation at a doorstep. And I wanted to let the audience know, like, this is what this film's going to be like.
Yes.
But that's the longest situation. So what you've done is you've scared them a bit, and they think, is every scene going to be this long? And right when it gets there, it goes and it moves. And then the film moves really quickly. Even though it's slow, it moves so fast towards the end that you are used to it going slow, so that it seems fast, even though it would be slow in most other films, I think.
Well, and so it sounds to me like you understand what Schrader was getting at from the beginning, which was he said, this isn't boring cinema for boringness' sake. Like, that's not the end goal. The end goal is that you lean back so that the audience can lean in. Like you said, like you're opening in a way that makes them all kind of go, wait, okay, like, I know this is the beginning. You can get away with almost anything when it's expository at the beginning, but then like you can't get away with that in Act 2 and 3. And so you're opening up all that aperture at the beginning so they get sucked in, and then you start to pull them in. And I just feel like everything nowadays is like everyone talks about hook. What's the hook? Was that sounded like a Spielberg movie. Anyways, and so I really, really appreciate that, because even our latest film, our doc, it definitely, like, I was really trying hard to achieve some degree. I don't think it's truly a transcendental style film, but some degree of leaning always away from the audience as much as I could. And
well, and we took
audiences,
the approach.
well, I was just gonna say audiences respond well, but there's always going to be a few people. We've probably shown it online to about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
And we've gotten feedback from over 100 of them. And we get mostly really positive feedback. And we've gotten this, like, there's always this little faction of people that are like, it is just too slow. I just think you could trim 20 minutes. If you were less in love with the story, this is actually what someone said. If you were less in love with the story, you could cut 20 or 30 minutes from this. And I'm like, why would we want to watch a movie made by someone who's not in love with what it's, obviously, hopefully not like with yourself or whatever, but like, you know, with the characters and with what you're trying to accomplish, you know?
I mean, I think Tarantino was right when he says, if half the audience loves your film and half the audience hates it, you made a great movie. You made the movie. Yes. If everyone likes it, you did it for a reason. If everyone hates it, it's bad. But if it's half and half, and all my films, all my projects have been like that, people either love it or it's not their cup of tea.
Yes.
Like, that means you're really saying something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just vanilla. It's not really making a statement that people can either be on board with or not.
And beyond statements, it's like a visceral experience that someone either is just gonna like regurgitate and go, "Bull!" Like my body just rejected that, right? Like, or they like, or it hits like a balm. You know, it's like, whoa, like, yeah, I love that. Well, I've always felt, I felt very similar to that. This idea of like anything but lukewarm.
Yeah, and I think people get it confused with cinema because they don't really know. They don't have a very big library of cinema. They maybe just have American cinema.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm drawn to European cinema, because I think they label things pretentious when they were actually uncomfortable. And those are two different things. It can be pretentious that you held too long, but it also can be uncomfortable, and they're having to work and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so they get those confused, like, oh, it's a pretentious film. Like, I mean, mine could not get more pretentious. It's about an Orthodox, it's black and white, European cinema, and they're mostly one takes. But it's what served the movie because Orthodoxy is so colorful. My last film is just color. It's all about color. Orthodoxy it's all about icons and color, but really it's about movement. It's the smell of the candle. It's the crying of children. There's so many different aspects. And I said, well, what if I took all that away? And I mean, it worked in Andrei Rublev by Tarkovsky, and people have seen the trailer and they're like, oh, this is like Tarkovsky by way of Texas. And I'm like, I think maybe it's because it's Orthodoxy, it's icons and black and white. But really, when you watch the film, it's really more like Jim Jarmusch, Dead Man, probably. I think.
So I wanna back up the conversation and ask you just quickly, could you
Mhm.
summarize like a pitch? Like what
Mhm.
is El Tonto por Cristo? Because that's the film that you guys have. And
Yeah.
and then also once we get an idea of the basic story,
Mhm.
um, without giving anything away, um, what where is it at? Like when is it,
And maybe we could, yeah, even jump into some of the logistics of how you guys approach
Mhm.
filmmaking with your lifestyle and taking care
Of
of your
course.
family.
we always want to get into that, yeah.
Yeah.
You should read your director's statement.
Yeah, because I can never. I'm really bad at remembering
I know.
things.
I was like, I hate being asked
oh
to
no,
put
I
you on
hate it.
the
It's like
No,
spot.
the
it's
log
okay. It's
line.
okay.
Don't make him do
I
that.
mean, I think the log line is it's a monk on a monastery on the coast of Texas becomes an unlikely saint. What is it?
I think you should read your director's statement.
Okay.
Well, this we have this thing that's happening internationally, and it's not solidified, but it's very exciting. But it's not solidified, so it's hard to get too excited.
Yeah.
But Josh was asked for a director's statement, and he read it to me, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. So this is probably the best way to give this to y'all. This is fair.
Okay.
This is like a couple days ago.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll just read the first part then because I think that's really
They can edit it out.
yeah, for sure. I'll just read this and you guys can edit whatever you need to edit out of this long. So it's like when I first envisioned El Tonto Por Cristo, I was captivated by the raw mystical spirituality that emanates from Eastern Orthodoxy. As an artist, I sought to dive into a world that is profoundly unrepresented in cinema. The film, set against the stark, rugged backdrop of a Texas coastline, brings to life the intimate existence of the Orthodox monastery. Here, amidst the relentless waves and shifting sands, we find an abbot, a soul reader, a fool for Christ, along with the men who have chosen a life of quiet devotion and contemplation. Inspired by the likes of Bergman, Bellatar, and Palawowski, I aim to craft a narrative that is both deeply introspective and universally resonant. These matters of cinema have taught me that true power of film lies not in grandiose gestures, but in subtle, almost impeccable moments of human existence. With El Tonto Por Cristo, I wanted to capture the essence of a spirituality that almost feels alien to the Western audience, yet is the very bedrock of much of Western faith. So, yeah, if that maybe breaks it down a little bit.
I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I like it because like there's some films where I watch them and they just unflinchingly approach spiritual matters in
Yeah.
ways that I go, "Oh, dang, I wish I'd been the one to say that, but I was too scared." Like I feel all those things, but I just because I'm constantly so just kind of like how orthodoxy I think is considered maybe like a Christian religious minority, if that makes sense, at least in the United States.
Mm.
So we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, otherwise known as Mormons, and so I really identify with any film that explores like orthodoxy, Judaism, um, or even spirituality in a unique way that isn't necessarily like a commercial, right? And so like even guys who are, I don't know if he's Catholic, he probably is, um, Terrence Malick,
Oh, yeah.
and like watching movies like Tree of Life, where I'm like, how did this guy take this movie
Yeah.
all the way to the Oscars? Brad Pitt has something to do with that probably, but
Right.
but he takes it all the way to the Oscars, and yet he's so boldly exploring these deeply, yeah, there's deeply personal stuff, but there's also these deeply spiritual things. I mean, he's putting like biblical verse on the screen.
Job in there, yeah.
Yeah, like right off the bat, and no one was like, "Oh, this is just cheesy" or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
he's doing this thing with
And his
spiritual,
new film is about Jesus.
right?
His new coming out, The Way of the Wind. And Cannes has given him an invitation every year, sight unseen. They want Terrence Malick there.
Right.
So there is a need for not Christian films, but spiritual films. There's a need for that in cinema. It's always been there.
Well,
Right.
It's like the seventh seal, about life and death. And there's
Right.
so much. It's I think someone said, what was it? That if it has an agenda, basically.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I think it was Jordan Peterson was talking about propaganda. He doesn't like Christian propaganda films. He likes spiritual films. And I was like, oh, that's a really good way of looking at that. And I was really concerned when I made this film because I was like, is this Orthodox enough for all the Orthodox, around the world? Or, and I was asking people who are very high up and who are a lot more educated than me. And they were like, no, you should even go farther. Like, push the envelope for the Orthodox. So it's a weird position to be in as a writer, director, creator is I'm trying to invite people in, but also challenge people, also stay true and not be disrespectful,
And
but
also make cinema.
it makes cinema and make it exciting and no apologies.
Yes.
There's no apologies. And if someone's upset by it, that was never an intention. And you're always going to upset someone.
Yeah.
That's hands down.
Well, like you are without a doubt, if you can even get them to sit down and watch the film all the way through, there's going to be some people with certain religious affiliation who are going to watch this and go, well, that's not reflecting what I think is true. And they just can't see past, like, it doesn't matter. We are trying to understand another human being's perspective on this world and their experience through that, and how, like, for me, it's like exciting to watch a film, even made by someone who's maybe not even particularly religious, where they can make something where there's a spiritual, like, recognition of I'm part of something so much bigger than me. And a character even coming, like, did you see the film Sound of Metal?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh man, where he do I ruin the, if you haven't watched it yet, get on. Where he takes the things out at the end. I'll try and it's just literal, like, zero volume. Like,
oh yeah, I cried in the ending of that film for sure.
It's just exquisite where he just sits there and it's just a few images and that's the end of the movie. And I found that to be like a profoundly spiritual film that made no efforts to try and dig into what church does that guy go to? It's like probably doesn't seem to go to any. And so that's something Anna and I've said a lot, is that I think as a young person, I was a little more quote unquote evangelical, not religiously, but like my attitudinal approach to film was more evangelical in the sense that, like, I should really help people see things the way I see them.
Right.
And I think that's sort of changed to be like, no, I just actually want to be honest. I'm so scared to be honest. And I watch a movie like Ordet by Carl Dreyer and go, that guy laid it so bare on the table. How is that movie even possible?
Yeah.
And yet I wish I'd made that movie.
There's a lot of if you like Ordet, you're going to love El Tonto Por Cristo. And it was some subconscious things happen. There's a scene and it happens for a split second. And I was like, why does that look so familiar to me? But we were on this remote beach. It was a primitive beach, vacant. And we had to get there by 4 pontoon boats, all of our gear, and off the Gulf of Mexico with a 7-foot coffin. And I was super stressed. We get there, there's no food and water. We brought a little bit, but we shot this one scene. And everyone's like, man, I felt that. I said, me too. And then I was rewatching Ordet the other day. I go, oh, that's why. It's almost a mirror image.
The reeds and the silhouettes almost, yeah.
He's coming over the sand dunes. We have a scene that evokes, it's a chef's kiss, and it was never on our lookbook. It wasn't something that we discussed or talked about. It was just, sometimes you're forced when you're making movies to go left or go right. There's no other option. You have to film. And I was like, let's just turn the camera here. Because the camera was so big with the lens. We're shooting the ocean. And to even do a 20-yard camera move would have taken us hours.
And the sand.
And in the sand and the platform, the camera. So I said, just swivel it around. And we moved some logs and cleared it out. And that was the shot. And that was the Ordet shot.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm so glad, because I love that movie so much, because it makes you feel and you don't know why.
I'm telling you, like, to me, like, I think maybe the most powerful experience I've ever had in any cinematic way. We have like a big theater room in our house now, which it's cool. And we've watched movies in great megaplexes and everything. And I think the most powerful experience I've ever had was watching it on like a cheap 32-inch LCD that was given to us for free by like a neighbor when we moved into our house, watching Ordette for like the third time by myself
I
on a
love it.
Sunday night in the dark and just crying by myself and feeling like just deeply known by a power higher and bigger than me. And that's like once again, like what right does that movie have to my attention? It does nothing quick. It doesn't it's painstakingly slow, and yet I find every second of it riveting.
Yeah, it's so important. Just when you said Ordette, is how no one knows what Ordette is, but people do know Ordette. And when you listen to different podcasts and you listen to Paul Thomas Anderson, he drops Ordette in, or you listen to Scorsese, he drops Ordette in, and like
Right.
the greats know it. And cinemas, you go to the Lincoln Center in New York and they're playing Ordette and they're doing an expose on it. That's what I strive for as an artist and a filmmaker. Obviously, you want to be able to pay your bills and you do want to be successful so you can make more cinema, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's all about making something, and you may not be around for it. I know that's when you tell your partner in life that I don't care if
It'll be
this
worth
makes
it when we're dead.
Yeah.
my entrepreneurial wife is like, oh no, that's not how we're looking at it totally. But this is what happened. I said, when I made This World Won't Break, I said, a dream would be a kid in Germany pulls off a DVD or a Blu-ray from a library and it says This World Won't Break, and he watches it. And somehow he's transported to Deep Ellum, to Dallas, Texas. Well, I got an email from a kid. He was not German. He was Canadian. And he was 17 years old. And he said he rented it from his library, This World Won't Break. And he's watched it several times. And he goes, all my friends ask, is Deep Ellum real? I said, it's real. Deep Ellum, it's an art district in Dallas, Texas. And he goes, does it take place in the 80s? I said, sort of. And I was like, he was just so intrigued. And he goes, I just love this movie so much. And I was like, wow, that's the power of cinema.
Yeah.
It did not play in all the theaters. And, it did great in the film festival world. And we were in Scotland at the Glasgow Film Festival. And one of our screenings was pretty thin. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no one really here. It kind of antsy. It was like a noon showing. And a lady came out and she worked for BAFTA. And she goes, I love this movie. It reminds me of Horton Foote, which is, he wrote Tender Mercies with Robert Duvall. And so like in an empty theater, one lady saying that one thing made my entire trip. That's what we do. That's what we're making cinema for, is you can't make everything free. That's why there's different flavors of ice cream,
Yeah.
You can't appease everyone. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and it's like, would you rather reach a broader audience and only like touch them for a moment and then they forget about it, or touch, less people but deeply, where they can't remember? I mean, even Ordette, you were like, I didn't remember why that shot was so familiar, because it was maybe deep in your subconscious, but no longer like intentional. And I think that there's an author in Texas, Austin Kleon, maybe you've heard of him, but he writes about how we are the sum of all of our influences, and that the only common denominator in all of your work that you need is you. And I love that idea that, like, I'm not trying to make this, we can get in our heads like, is this orthodox enough, like you said, or is this enough? Is this, how are people going to respond to what I make? But I think if it's deeply personal, then there's that human level of connection. Like, who knows what Ordette is about? The people who connect with it on that human level for some reason or another, and can't even put it into words, like why that resonated.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty akin cinematic cousins here, but let's go back to some of the boring. I guess I'm gonna make
the logistical
Jessica
stuff
mad at me. The logistical stuff, the entrepreneurial, the like, going off of piggybacking off your comment on, I don't care if it makes money, and then your wife faints, right? How are you guys doing this? Because everyone does it different, right? Some people have to do this as a side hustle. Some people are managing to make it a living. Some people are, raising money in different ways. right now, I guess what's been your journey, a little bit of your journey and a little bit of your everyday now, like
Mhm.
in terms of life balance and making
How
films that
you're
are
financing these and
reality. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica can really talk about that, but I can quickly say it changes every single time.
Mhm.
Like we said, you guys have young children. Ours were young when I made this role on break, younger, and life was different. It was pre-epidemic, pandemic. But then because of the pandemic, I was able to hop on to a distribution company that got me into 1,000 libraries and got me on, online. And so that was a different avenue. With El Tonto Por Cristo, it's been the first film we made for almost nothing. Quick story. We were at things change. It used to be really positive that you made a film for $7,000, like Robert Rodriguez. Well, you
Right.
can't say that anymore. You can't, when you're on a podcast, you can't say the exact amount that you made your new film for because you're going through sales and distribution,
Right.
and a number changes everyone's perception. We had made this is years ago. We had made this for One Break. It premiered it won at the Dallas International Film Festival, Best Feature, and it took off and went around the world. And I was so proud that I'd made it for $35,000,
That's 36.
$36,000 over a year and a half. But that's minus all the in-kinds because I work in the photo industry and do ad work and stuff like that. And so I was able to borrow and trade on the scale of like $300,000 worth of locations and gear, and so and talent. I'm a part of a theater company here in Dallas called the Okra House Theater, and so it was just like I was writing for these people that I know. So it's
I forgot that about your story, but I just
yeah,
want to plug that I think that's brilliant.
yeah,
So many of us use actors that are like only working to try and act in film, but working with
exactly,
local theater talent
and they're
is
so good.
so obvious that I don't know why
Mhm.
everyone doesn't do it your way, because I
Yeah.
guarantee you got great performances because these people are
Oh,
doing it all the time. All the
and
best actors come from theater.
the crazy thing is they're so hungry, and they're in the real world. And also I think with theater actors, they do plays constantly, so their skills are so sharp, because if you're an actor, maybe you did a film, it doesn't come out for 2 or 3 years and no one sees that. These guys, I mean, it's raw, especially at the Okra House Theater. And Matthew Posey is the creative director there. He was in This Role Won't Break, and he plays Father John. He's the lead role in El Tonto Por Cristo. And I wrote it for him. I wrote the movie for Matt. And I think that's one thing that you'll never be disappointed in your film, is when you write for someone, because you're giving them the keys to the city, right? It's you're not like, can they handle this? You wrote it for them, and you know their range. And also with theatrical actors, is they're already here. All you have to do is have them dial it back. It's really hard sometimes for film actors to to go too amped up, because they're so used to playing these parts. But yeah, that was yeah. So, and we were talking about this role won't break, and there was investors, and like there was Dallas money around, and I'm not going to name names, but somebody goes, "What's your next film?" I was like, "Oh, we have this going on." They go, "Well, do you need the same amount you did for your last film? Was that like 2-3 million?" And we were like, this was not, we didn't know that you weren't supposed to say, no, we didn't make it for 2-3 million. I made it for $36,000. And the whole, like, one person walked away, and then the whole room changed.
I mean, it was like, as it came out, we thought, we were like, we're not going to waste your money. Look what we can do with, we were thinking like, look what we can do with resources. If we could do
Right.
this for this amount. So as the words were coming out, I was like trying to bring them back, because
Right.
they're like, I mean, what'd you make this for? 2 mil? They said mil, 2 mil, 3 mil, with like a little shrug. And I was like, no, and then I was like, wait, words come back, because it totally devalued what we actually did.
Yeah, so the guy was like, "Oh, so you can probably raise $200,000 for your next film on your own," and everybody walked away. And I was like, "Oh, that's just so it's such a backwards way of thinking, and it's just how it is." So that's why on most podcasts, if you listen to like No Film School or Making Movies is Hard and stuff like that, they always say, can you talk about the budget? And people always used to talk about the budget. And now they say it's under $1 million, because that's not lying. That's not lying, you know. It's way under $1 million. But, you know, yeah, so to branch out more, how do we go about it's ever changing. This film is a lot different. We have investors.
Well, we had made a film.
Right.
So people, and it did well, you know. So when Josh did the proof of concept for El Tonto, we decided to, like, we're kind of like, all right, well, and this is my entrepreneurial side. I'm like, I don't take no for an answer. So I'm just like, well, how? So I'm always asking, how can we do this? How can we do this? So we were looking at we knew it was going to have to be a SAG film. So we also knew that if we could do it as a SAG ULB, that we could basically get our actors, everything could be half the cost. And because we have a lot of relational equity over the years of living in Dallas and what Josh had described, we knew that we could quadruple our production value and our budget of what we needed to raise. It was kind of this sweet spot for us. It at least felt like for Josh and I, we walk this path as, what can we do? And so it's a yes, it's an open door that keeps us going down the next path. So while this budget was so much more than This Will Won't Break, it was also a European style cinema. It was going to require a lot more, and it was a lot more involved also because it was a SAG film. So,
and on this film, we also did what we always do, which is we all lived in this house that was built in the late 1800s. It's a 4-story house, and that was also the monastery. But we all lived on the second floor, and we shot on the third, fourth, and the first, and outside. There's something about that. I read that Wes Anderson always does that. He rents out an entire boutique hotel or motel, or does a little house, and everyone lives there. And so everyone would come down for breakfast, even if they weren't shooting. And then I would be like, you know what? What if you walked by? So everybody's available. And they're hungry. We only shot for 14 days on this movie.
Oh my gosh.
I know, but it was sun up to sundown, and everybody wanted to be in it at all times.
You were walking around in their cassocks.
Yeah, they were walking around in cassocks. I was constantly rewriting it because I was able to do that because they were around, and they would come up and be like, "Ooh, what if I did this?" And I would be like, convince me, because we only have 2 hours left. Is this important? And sometimes it would win, sometimes it would not. And it was still part of the story. So there's that, and that's putting everything in front of the lens. That's one thing I tell. That's our cat. Sorry, we don't have to remove a cat. It sounds like a child.
Ours coming in too.
Oh yeah. There you go. Cat sounds like a kid. He yells.
That was funny. I was like, I thought you guys said your kids were grown.
Yeah. I always tell everyone to put everything that you have in front of that lens. And, if you looked behind our lens, there was 4 or 5 people working on the set, at times, just because, we didn't have the budget. I know that I can do more than I'm supposed to. And I know it's only for a short period of time. Because a lot of people who were SAG that were around me, and some people were union. So we actually were filming during the SAG strike. We were one of the very few films to get the SAG agreement.
Oh, great.
And it came on the day before we started shooting. And so we're able to film the movie while the rest of the world was not. So that was very, very, very huge.
You said that very quickly, but you got that the day before
we got the
production.
We did. It
Oh
was
my gosh.
3 a.m. They sent us
I mean, there's so many miracles about that. There is no doubt in my mind, and we could talk for hours on it, the miracles for this film.
Yep.
I mean, because the budget that it came under, even so, we have a consultant producer who handles our business affairs. and he actually works within the Terrence Malick camp too. And when I was talking with him and I said, okay, we wrapped, and he goes, you did without any incident? And like no insurance incident. I mean, I can just tell you our margins were so tight because of the SAG strike. I mean, we had actors, but we had them for like this time. And we had them, and we didn't have a budget to go beyond our 14 days. We had certain rentals. Things had to go well. And while we don't have special effects or stuntmen or anything like that, it's still, I mean, you're talking about really full days. Things have to be, we don't need people getting sick. Like, things have to happen. And there was just so much protection. Like I would literally wake up every morning, walk the block. And one of my prayers, I would be like, okay, I felt like this was a scene from maybe It's a Wonderful Life or something, but I was just like, Archangel Gabriel, I was like, I know you're really busy because everyone knows who you are and wants you around. I was like, but can you just take your wings and spread them over this film? Like I was just asking for all the intercessions, all the protection, because we had enough, but we didn't have more than enough. We had enough. Everything went well. And up to that point, it was just, there was, miracles. And then it would seem like one door would close hard and then one would fling open. So that was, but yeah, getting the SAG. So, I mean, that was the thing, is like, we had these actors, people flying in, we had rentals. This was the day we were shooting. And we had been bugging them, like just every day, all of us, full court press, calling, emailing. We get that email in at 2, 3, I don't know. It was early, the wee hours of the morning, we were supposed to start. And they're like, yes, you can film, but you are not making another film this year. And we were like, okay, fine, we won't.
Yeah, I think the most important thing probably that was solidified for me, that if there's any advice for filmmakers, it's really only be concerned about 2 days at a time. The day that you wake up, take care of that day and what's happening tomorrow, because anything after that's going to change. It's going to be totally different but you can control. So Jess was on the production house. She was controlling the next 2 days. I was on set filming and making sure we were getting ready for tomorrow. And that's all you can really, really do. I mean, you can have your schedule. You can have things, you need to have it mapped out, but just know you're sort of only in control for about 2 days, and let yourself be okay with that, And most of the filmmaking, like you guys know, it's 90% paperwork and 10% actually filming anything. And it's just putting out fires. And if you're good at all those things and you have the lookbook and the aesthetic and you're prepared. And I said, you say, how do we do this? How do we make these films and how do they look like they're $1 million films? It's because, we don't have the money for pre-production, but you do have time. Even though you say we don't have time, we do. Like after work, I would go location scout. On the weekends, I would location scout. I would go to thrift stores and get all the clothes and the props. And that's one thing that I'm very proud of. People always say, like, your films, I love the costume design. And I'm like, it's me. I do that. I love it. It's maybe that's the Wes Anderson-y part of, like, I like to have it has to be a certain way, like even down to an ashtray. We're shooting things in black and white. And I was like, but it needs to be a lighter green. They're like, what? We're shooting in black and white. I'm like, just trust me. And when they had it on, it looks better.
Right.
Yeah. And we had a black and white LUT the whole time because where we shot was very colorful. Yeah. And there'd be moments of like, oh, let's shoot in this green kitchen. And I would put the black and white camera over it and be like, nope, that's a green. And you could fall in love with that, if you were shooting in color. And yeah, I think a big thing is just don't fall in love with, the thing I learned on this last film was don't fall in love with something too much where you can't see past everyone talking to you, like those 2 scenes that didn't work. And I worked everybody way too much and it didn't work. And, just listening to having people that you trust and love around you. And I would rather have a couple people that I trust and love around me on a set than 20 people who are professional, who are just trying to eat tacos and get out
Yeah.
for the next job,
Yeah.
because I can take it. It's a, we're lucky that we get to do this.
Yeah.
We live in this country, and technology has surpassed us enough where you can have an idea, and if you have enough tenacity and will, you can fast forward and be in a dark room with a silver screen and 100 heads looking at what you created. And that's the most magical thing. I don't understand how we can take something that was in our head, an idea, and a year later or however long, show people what was inside your brain.
And I think to what Josh is saying too, one of the things is, and it was a question that you had asked earlier, how do you, the time, the money, the budget. So a lot of what we do is in-house as well. We started our family younger than most, not terribly young, but we were, 24 when we had Julian, and Julian is now 23. And so, he's
my editor.
He edited the first film and this film. So he has some crazy editing skills, and he's the editor. And I produce and help co-create. And so when we would do things, whether it's a location scout, when the boys were young, we throw them in the car, pack a picnic, and that's what we're doing for a Saturday. So these are the things that we've all done together. Sonny, our youngest, he is a production assistant. So he'd be he'd be an actor, they both went to performing arts high school. And so, Josh would cast them. And so everything we would do together, and we always have, and now they're older and they have, they're one's graduating college, one's finishing up college, but we still show up and support each other. So we had all of this built-in in-house talent that would have been, a big chunk of a budget as well. And so I think that when people are wanting to make anything, but since we're talking about film, it's, what do you have? What do you have around you? And maybe you're like, man, I really don't have much. And then we'd say, well, how we got to have so much as a rich life is because we would show up not just for each other, but for other people's projects, lend a hand, be around, go the extra mile, do those things. And typically it'd be things we really believed in. We're like, this is incredible. And Josh has shot numerous music videos, not for everyone, but people that he really believes in their work. And then at the same time could use that as test shots which is something we did for El Tonto. We used that place that became the monastery and did a music video for somebody who we really believe in their work.
With that lens.
With that lens. And it was a test so it was mutually beneficial for them and for our film. And so I feel like that's always the how. And for anybody doing anything on an independent level, we all need each other. And so my first thing is there's a lot of personal growth. Personal growth is usually the most free and the easiest, but it's also the hardest. It's, so, I'd say for people, start working on how you show up for others and where your time, instead of consuming, it's creating, and even if that's I always look at things as my entrepreneurial brain too, is, all right, I want to spend time with these people because I'm interested in their craft, but also let's do something really human. How about we have them over for dinner? Because the conversations are naturally going to happen, right? That's where things happen, ideas. And you're like, I like you too. Let's see what we can do together.
Yeah.
So much of pre-production happened way before your script is even in process, because it's those things that feel intangible, but they're worth so much. And I feel like now, we've been married for 24 years, and we've made 2 films and are working on a 3rd script as we're working on the theatrical for this. And a huge part of that, I would say, is personal growth, health in general, health, body, mind, spirit, and in that personal space, you are showing up for your community and you're showing up for others, and your time will come. Probably your time's not ready until you've put some of that in. And then when you're ready, those people also trust you and want to be part of what you're doing as well. And so I'm really grateful for that process, and even modeling that for our boys too in their life and, with the path that they're taking.
I think that's so valuable. Everything you just said was so valuable. First of all, I have this Steven Spielberg complex, which is he made Jaws when he was 27, and what's wrong? And it's it's this thing. It's well, first of all, it's not 1970, whatever. Anyway, you know,
I have mine's the Paul Thomas Anderson. He made Boogie Nights at 26 and Magnolia at 28.
uh,
I'm like, what am I doing?
right. But like we also just didn't live in LA at that time, and
But
we also just didn't. We just don't have those inroads. It's like, I mean, I grew up in like Ohio. It's like
yeah,
the antithesis of film hub. It's like the film pit of the world. I mean, there's
yes,
no film happening, right? Sorry for any
yes,
listeners in Ohio.
yeah.
I'm
We
exaggerating.
love Ohio, but
And
yeah.
you can
Go
do it.
red.
But the something you said that I really appreciated was um, the personal growth is the cheapest, but the hardest, right? Like in terms
Yeah.
of like what we can offer in terms of value to our art. And it reminded me of what I've been seeing. Speaking of needing to consume less, I need to be off of LinkedIn right now. I've been seeing all those AI Studio Ghibli photos popping up where everyone is now able to say, show me this picture in the style
Yeah.
of Studio Ghibli animation. And it's like this grotesque thing, right? Like, and I love that of anything that came out of this, I love Miyazaki's response to it because people showed it
Mhm.
to him. And he said, I feel like humanity is losing belief in itself. Something along those lines.
100%.
And just this idea of like, oh my gosh, there's this magic tool that will do it for me.
Right.
And this idea of like, look, if AI could make a great film, let's just say it's like actually amazing. Like it looks photoreal, the acting feels like Daniel Day-Lewis is starring in it with Meryl Streep and I don't know, whatever, name your fantasy football list. And and it's actually great and it like makes me cry. I still would have zero interest watching it and zero interest making it. Even if I
Mhm.
had to sit for 100 hours and like, oh, it's an AI technician or quote unquote. The point is that we don't do it for that like what you just said, like we want to build a community. We want to use this guy that was in our first film that we met through community theater and make him star in the second film that we wrote for him because like he's an exquisite actor, like he's this human being and we're gonna get to like spend time together making this movie and then we get to like share that movie with the world. And I don't know, like what why would we do this? Well, the reason we wouldn't do it is because it'd be easy to let something else do it for us. But then again, that character growth, that personal growth is gone, right? And that's not why we're alive, is it? To like, I don't know. It's like Wall-E, where they're all sitting in those floating chairs and like
Yeah.
literally like withering away. And so
Yeah.
while we list all the great cinema, we drop Wall-E in at the end, which is a capstone on all the movies we've mentioned. But the
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just touching on that really fast is, you know, most of the cinema that I love. I mean, I do love cinema where it's my favorite actors. You know, I'll admit I like Ethan Hawke. There's
yeah,
lots of actors that you grow up with and you admire, but when you watch a film like Ida, I don't know one person in that film. That was that girl's first movie. She was a waitress. They scoured the earth. They cast for a year and a half, found no one. That he saw her in a cafe, and she's been in nothing since.
yeah.
And
That's like
name
Bresson, right? He used
right,
models, not actors. Yeah.
exactly. And there's something. So my thing is, we had a couple opportunities to have some bigger names, but it's like it's going to take away from the film, and it's also you're bringing in an audience that wasn't really invited in a way, and they're
Mm.
going to be disappointed, and that's a negative review. So that's really why we did have some, um, Barry Corbin, who is in, No Country for Old Men. He has the greatest monologue of all times. He's in my film, and I wrote him a monologue, and it's one of those things on set. It was the end of the day, and we had shot for like 10 or 12 hours. It was 114 degrees in the Texas heat, and
Ugh.
I remember I was in the picture. Me and him are both grimy and sweaty, and we're just a mess. And I knew we had production meetings. I had to get up super early. We were driving to the beach to shoot, and I never forget. Like, is this the greatest day of my life? It felt like it was the greatest day because you've written something. One of your heroes is saying it, and you gave it everything you had and you got nothing left. And I was like, this is why we do this. This is it. If nothing else happens, I have that, and that's something you keep adding those moments, and you look back and you have 4 or 5 films that you're so proud of, and you can't wait to make your 6th.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I love that because I feel like the film itself is only a small piece of the whole
It
experience
is.
of making it. And we get to keep that experience forever and share just a little sliver of it with everyone else.
Yeah, and those who watch it will feel it.
They will
And I
feel it.
think we think so short term in terms of like either we think numbers like what's the MG this actor carries, what's the box
Mhm.
office we can expect on this thing. And what people totally forget is that movies, you can write them into your will. Like they are going to last longer than you will. And when we
Yeah.
measure success based on this, like what's going to happen in the first 12 days in theaters or whatever, like, or
Mm.
first 3 days in theaters, and we get so hung up on that. And it's like, then we start to make we start to play the short game
Mhm.
when we're actually we're in a long game. And so
Oh,
what
it's
you
so
guys are doing is you're taking, okay, well, this cast isn't going to bring money on day one at the box office, and that could have repercussions down the line. But most likely, a stinky movie, it's way, way more common that a stinky movie has a big flash in the pan opening because you've got marketing budget, and
Or
then it
there's
just
someone in it and they want to go see it, but
yeah,
then
it's
they
got a
don't,
big
people
person
don't
in it,
recommend it to their friends and it
Yeah.
doesn't
and then it just fizzles out
last.
and disappears. And then there's movies like The Iron Giant, which got like totally short stick, right? Like
Mm.
Warner Brothers forgot to market it. Like it's like, like
Yeah.
just like nothing happened in theaters for that movie, hardly at all. Like it was a bomb. And that movie, everyone deeply loved it. I mean, sorry if you didn't, but like
Yeah.
it's this classic that people have just word of mouthed for not just years, but generations. Like literally we're starting to raise our kids on movies now that bombed at the box office, but they were
I
beautiful.
mean, It's
Like
a Wonderful Life, even. We
It's a Wonderful
mentioned
Life
that
was a
one
box
bombed.
office
Yeah.
bomb. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite films of all time. And like Shawshank, they released it 2 times in the theaters because they were like, okay, something happened. It didn't play at all, and they dropped it again in the theaters, nothing. And it's one of the greatest films of all time,
It's
Shawshank Redemption.
It was like number one on IMDb for years
Yes.
as the greatest film of all time.
Yeah.
Like you said, Ordette's been in Sight and Sound's list of 100 greatest films of all time
Yes.
for decades. Like that's why, like you said, like all
Yeah.
these great currently working, um, they all refer to it. It's in their DNA, which means it's in the movies we're watching, even if most people haven't heard of this stuff. So like, yeah, I
Yeah. Yeah, Bellatar was like that for me. I thought that he was from like the 40s or 50s. He made those films. And I find out he started making those in the 2000s. And it's just, if you don't mind watching a horse and carriage for 10 minutes with wind blowing, it's probably not for you, but it's for me.
yeah.
I like it because it's nothing that I would make. But I think if you surround yourself with cinema like that it's going to get inside of your blood, and then maybe you're going to hold a shot for 20 more seconds, like you should. Not 20 more minutes, but 20 more seconds. Because that's like what Paul Schrader says is when the door closes in Pickpocket and the camera pushes in on the door and it stops, as the audience, you're like, is he going to come busting back in? Is somebody else going to open the door? And then it cuts to the next scene. And you were thinking something. We all were thinking something. It gives you a little bit of anxiety, I think, which is good. And that's super important.
Yeah, no. Well, thanks for mentioning Bresson because A Man Escaped is up there for
I
me.
mean, come on. He says it in the title. A man escaped. He tells you what happens.
Right. The ending is like
he has to go make a whole movie about it. I think it's brilliant. If you can pull that off, you can pull anything off.
Yes. Isn't that something? Isn't that that's amazing? Well, oh my gosh. Well, you guys, I don't know if we have one clear theme to this conversation at this point,
Right.
but it's been such a delight. Super grateful for y'all's time and super excited for El Tonto Por Cristo. I'm genuinely very way more excited to watch that film than almost any film I can think of this year. So when are we going to get to watch it?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Let's end on that note. Tell us.
Yeah, so people can follow us on El Tonto Por Cristo on Instagram. El Tonto Por Cristo the movie. that what it is?
And El Tonto Por Cristo movie is
Yeah.
on Instagram. And then we have our website, which was really just kind of a holding pattern for email. So right now with,
We've submitted to some films that are foreign films. And we
foreign
should,
film festivals.
yeah, foreign film festivals. And we've kind of shot for the moon. We've gotten some positive news. We don't know if it's happening or if it's not happening, but the film will most likely be released theatrically internationally first.
Okay.
And then it will be in theaters all over the United States of America next. But we're dropping a new trailer since we have all sound design and the film's been locked, but we have a really exciting new trailer coming out, and just there's some exciting things that we can't discuss.
Yeah.
This recording, we
yes,
can't.
But believe me, I'm ready for everyone to see. It's been the hardest when you talk about patience and talk about slow cinema. Not only is this slow cinema, it's the slowest getting it into a cinema. I feel
right. That's how it goes.
I have some smart people around me and passionate Jessica and our other producers, and they're like, Josh, I know 5 or 6 months sounds like an eternity, but it's not. It's the right time.
Yeah.
So it's also great because I'm finishing up my new script for my third film. So that's kind of a blessing as well that I can focus on that. And we're releasing the new poster really, really soon, which was hand painted by the same guy who did This World Won't Break poster. And it's everything I could have ever wanted in a poster. So I'm excited to release that as well.
So if you follow us, or I know you get our email, then you're going to start to hear a little bit more. So it's really fun to have an inner circle of people that are interested in rooting. So you'll start to get some regular correspondence that way of stuff that's happening.
Is it Josh David Jordan people can follow the film, or is it Holyfield Films?
On Instagram?
No, for the email.
Oh, they go to the website or the Instagram. They can subscribe.
Okay.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, subscribe. We just encourage our listeners to
you do that.
So
like a weekly update. So
that would be better. Yeah.
Yeah.
In case people aren't checking social, like
absolutely.
Yes,
it's a lot.
You don't want to be beholden to that. So subscribe via email if y'all are interested, and so that you stay in the know.
Yes.
And we're super excited for it. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you for all the excitement. You got me excited again.
I know that feeling. Yes. So I'm grateful that we got to be a part of it.
Also, I'm excited to follow y'all's. Is your film in festivals right now? The documentary?
Yeah.
Ride in Paradise is currently still in festivals, and it will be once again. Nothing has been etched in stone yet, and I'm feeling the same antsiness in terms of being patient with let's take that deal or let's do this thing or whatever. And I go, no, okay. It's just going to take some time. We're still working the phones on that. And but like you said, promising things, it feels good. So.
Well, congratulations on that, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys. Awesome.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
We're excited to stay in touch. Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wait.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you'll love the Feature Filmmaker Academy, a program designed to teach anyone how to finance and finish a feature film.
There are many resources teaching you how to do a great job, but what they don't teach you is how to get the job in the first place.
You cannot have a career making feature films until you've made at least one. Anyone can make a feature film using our proven model.
It's risk-free. If you follow all the steps in the program, you'll finance and finish a feature film, or we'll give you your money back.
Learn more at invisiblemansion.com/feature filmmaker or click the link in the show notes.
If you find this free resource valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review or share it with another filmmaker.
We'll see you next time. Bye.